here's an inside look behind the truth of King Von's passing, as a lot of new information has now just been released. On November 6, 2020, we lost one of the best upcoming rappers in the music industry. Sadly, rapper King Von passed away during an altercation involving an incident with rival rapper Quando Rondo and his best friend, Lil Tim. Now, I'll be sharing a lot of new information about the court case involving Lil Tim and Rondo's involvement later in the video, but here's actually how the day started. Now the day, it starts in Atlanta. Now Atlanta is home of the best recording studios, best way to record with other rappers to get features done. It's simply, if you can sum it up, it's the rap mecca of the entire world. If you want to be a rapper, you go to Atlanta. Now King Von, he was out in Atlanta on November 6th. He was originally celebrating the release of his new album, Welcome to O Block. And this was a few selected friends, family members, as well as business partners. They all got together at a nightclub called Opium. Now this was casual stuff, listening and celebrating to the album of Welcome to O Block. Now King Von and his boys, they rented out an Airbnb for that night, as they were planning on hitting a studio late at night and they needed a place to crash. Now while at the album release party, it was said by a few people there that King Von, he was not himself on that night. Usually he's very excited and happy when he's near family and friends, but on that particular night, King Von was acting very strange. Now this could have been due to the fact that he got word mid-party that Quando Rondo was at a separate club just down the street of Opium, and at the end of the celebration party, that's when King Von heads into a SUV with a driver and only one other person. It has been said by King Von's manager that King Von typically will roll around with 3 security as well as his boys from O Block in a firearm-proof SUV, but this night, it was a different story. After the celebration party, they all started driving to an Airbnb. Halfway to the Airbnb, King Von then tells his driver to turn the car around to go to a new club called Monaco Lounge. Now at this lounge, Quando Rondo just so happened to be there, sitting in his parked car, taking a nap in his McLaren, so it's pretty obvious to spot his vehicle. As of right now, it's still unconfirmed whether this was a coincidence of them meeting up here, but me as well as a lot of others don't believe it was. Now when arriving to the lounge, King Von, he originally sat in his SUV for around 20 to 30 minutes. He was not talking to anybody, he was just staring at his phone. After arriving to the lounge and sitting in his parked car, that's when the rest of Von's security and the boys from O Block ended up getting word that Von was at this new lounge, and they all started immediately heading over, flooring their vehicles down the streets, as allegedly, the driver of Von's vehicle ended up reaching out to all of the other guys heading to the Airbnb saying, "There's something up with Von, you guys gotta get over here fast." Now, this is kinda crazy. Out of nowhere, all you see are these massive SUVs pulling up into the parking lot. These were full of all of King Von's O Block boys. Now out of nowhere, one of King Von's boys then scout out Quando Rondo as Rondo started to head out of his McLaren, waking up out of his nap. After getting word that Rondo is there, King Von is then seen hopping out of his SUV, walking into the middle of the street where a white SUV was parked, and Quando Rondo was actually standing right beside it. King Von and his crew, they then start swarming Rondo in the middle of the street. A crazy brawl then breaks out. King Von, Quando Rondo are going at it in the middle of the street. No firearms were being used or anything. until Rondo's friend Lil Tim hops out of the white SUV, pulls out a firearm, and uses it to defend Rondo in the brawl with King Von. Now, with the sound of Lil Tim's firearm being used in that specific area, it got the attention of some undercover cops that were parked down the street. So they started creeping up to the location where everything was going down. They parked their car, get out of their vehicle, and then start lighting up the street. Now, this was described as a war zone going on in the middle of the street. Firearms, they were being used from all over the place, left, right, and center. Everybody was running, ducking behind cars for cover, and while this was all going down, King Von and Quando Rondo were still in the middle of the street. Now, this was until King Von's best friend Muop then runs over to Von, knocks Quando Rondo out of the way, grabs King Von, and helps him get into the getaway vehicle, where they rushed over 100 miles an hour to get King Von to the local hospital. Now, sadly, in the getaway vehicle, they didn't get to the hospital fast enough. Sadly, King Von had passed in the process, and it was such an unfortunate event. This is something that definitely could have been avoided, but as said by King Von's own manager, who was actually standing beside Von when the brawl broke out, whenever King Von has a problem with someone, he doesn't take it lightly. He's not one to do social media beefs either. If you got a problem with Von, Von's gonna find you and sort it out. Now, the court case for this is going to be very interesting. Quando Rondo actually spoke about this in an interview that he did just a couple of weeks ago, where during the brawl with King Von in the middle of the street, Quando Rondo says that this was an out-of-body experience, meaning King Von must have hit him allegedly very hard, where Quando Rondo couldn't believe what was going on, and he was having an out-of-body experience to the point where he could not defend himself in that certain situation, which means that Lil Tim hopping out of the SUV to stand up for Rondo by using the firearm against King Von means that Lil Tim was doing an act of defense for Quando Rondo in this situation. Quando Rondo doing this interview with a YouTuber actually is huge in this court case, as if Quando Rondo is explaining it as to the point where he could not defend himself due to an out-of-body experience, and Lil Tim defending him with a firearm to the point where King Von sadly passed, this case could actually be open and shut very fast due to the fact that Lil Tim was doing an active defense for a friend who could not defend himself in a situation where they felt they could have had something very serious happen to them. It's very complicated. I'm not the smartest of people, but it's actually to the point where if this ends up working in court, Lil Tim will not be going to prison for the rest of his life for the passing of King Von, for him defending a friend who could not defend themselves, if that makes sense. But we're just gonna have to see how this plays out in court. I hope you enjoyed. It's been District Trending, and I'm out. Peace.